Well, in case you haven't heard of this guy, you might want to find out, because this man, George Soros, is quite possibly the most evil person in the world. Because, quite frankly, he is trying to destroy the world. This is the guy who wants globalism to be a reality. Open borders, no nations, just one big, shitty world.
We will no longer surrender this country or its people to the false song of globalism.
Trust me, globalism is where we all lose, and only the powerful, wealthy elite win. And this is the puppet master trying to make that happen. That's what they call him, by the way, the puppet master. And for good reason. This guy controls groups and governments all over the world. He's a fucking octopus who's got his tentacles wrapped around the globe. So it's hard to say anything about this guy without explaining, at least some of this stuff. But it's just incredibly complex. But let me just start with how this guy made his money. Because, I think that's pretty important. I don't think we talk about it enough. How you make your money. Whether you're middle class or rich. Just, for a quick comparison, how about Pablo Escobar and Steve Jobs? They're both billionaires. Are they just in different industries? No. There's a pretty big difference, So anyway, this guy started out as a hedge fund manager. So already, great start. But, he was a little bit different from all the other hedge fund managers. This asshole toppled countries' currencies just to make a profit. He's well known as the man who broke the Bank of England, another one of his nicknames.
You were the guy, they said, who broke the Bank of England.
Right, and
did.
Well, that's true.
What a fucking asshole. So anyway, let me explain real quick how that whole thing worked. After World War II, the Euro nations had some sort of arrangement that kept all their national currencies closely connected with each other, the European exchange rate mechanism. That was before they adopted the euro. That was in 95. Anyway, it's kind of complicated, but basically England was fucking up, not living up to their end of the deal, and their currency was about to be devalued. And George Soros got wind of this and bet against the British sterling to make a profit of $1 billion. And I believe he even, pushed it along because they were hoping it wouldn't be devalued. They were trying to prevent it, but I think he helped that one along because, that's how this guy rolls. He's the man behind the curtain pulling the strings. But basically what this guy did was borrow £10 billion from a number of banks in England, which is, not something many people can do. Banks don't lend out that kind of money to just anyone. But he was a high-level trader, so he borrows the £10 billion, then exchanges it into Deutschmarks, the German currency at the time. Then he waits for the British pound to devalue, which it did, and then he walks away with $1 billion in profit. Because basically what, before the British pound devalued, the exchange rate was 10 billion pounds equals 9 billion Deutschmarks. Then after Black Wednesday, when the pound was devalued, it was suddenly 10 billion pounds equals 8 billion Deutschmarks. Or, and those aren't the actual numbers, but, you get the idea. So, he only had to pay back the 10 billion pounds, which had just been devalued. But the Deutschmarks were still fine. So, see what he did there? See that sneaky little trick? Pulled a switcheroo or, basically just stole $1 billion from the British people. Fucking asshole. And I think it's even worse than that. Like, that particular trade had a ripple effect. It just made shit worse. And I don't pretend to understand all of it. It's complicated. But, you get the gist, right? And a bunch of people got screwed. It was like the '08 crisis. Jobs were lost. People's pensions were cut in half or lost. And it just all that kind of shit. And, this guy doesn't give a fuck. He's basically like a Gordon Gekko on steroids. Gordon Gekko would buy a company and just gut it and sell off the assets and everything else for a profit and all those jobs, pensions, inconsequential. Who gives a fuck? A company that is otherwise doing fine, because sometimes companies are just headed for bankruptcy and that's just, their fate. But anyway, this is like what Soros does. He just fucking comes through these countries and just swings a wrecking ball through their economies. It wasn't just England. He took advantage of situations in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, Russia. Thailand called him an economic war criminal. And the Malaysian Prime Minister has described him as Dracula, someone who sucks the blood from people. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, explain what kind of a guy he is, because I'm probably going to be doing several videos on him. The web of conspiracies that surround this man is unbelievable. And, that's how he made his money. And apparently he's trying to do the same thing in China right now. And, China ain't having none of it, though. A lot of these countries are just, they're on the lookout for George Soros, They don't want him anywhere near their countries. It's fucking nuts. And the fact that he keeps doing these things, though, just wrecking economies, really suggests this is all just a power trip for him. Because, he's obviously smart enough to make money in a way that wouldn't collapse economy and cause such devastation.
And China needs to become a more open society. As China is becoming a world leader, it must learn to pay more attention to the opinion of the rest of the world.
Now that I got that out of the way, let's move on to the other way he destroys countries, because it's not just financially. This guy has a system for how he topples governments, and he actually published this stuff in one of his books, I believe, and he talks about the revolutions he's been involved in, and that's how arrogant he is. But it's he also very heavily controls the media anyway, so it's not like people are going to be talking about it a great deal because he's got so much fucking control. But this stuff is on the record. Anyway, here's the system, 7-step system, and he's used it to topple or interfere with governments and revolutions to varying degrees, like all over the world. Mostly Eastern Europe. And anyway, step 1, form a shadow government using humanitarian aid as cover. Now, that first one is very interesting. If you pay attention to this kind of stuff, always remember that one, because I've noticed that tactic used in a lot of things, like the Clinton Foundation, for example. Yeah, we're such a great charitable organization, aren't we? Oh, we feed starving kids all over the world and cure cancer. Oh, we're just awesome. Yeah, well, if it's such a great charitable organization, why isn't Hillary boasting about all the great things they've done? She's running for president. You would think she'd be listing off all the great deeds her charity has done, am I right? Wrong. The entire thing is a money laundering scheme, so she's never going to bring it up because that would get people interested in it. She doesn't want that. But the moment you call something a charity, it automatically becomes benign. It automatically has this huge, sweeping level of credibility. It's like the opposite of calling someone racist. Somehow it immediately makes you a bad person, and the hordes of emotional idiots instantly believe it. You know what I mean? Anyway, another great example is the migrant crisis. Remember how they were able to manipulate the people into accepting that one? Manipulate the virtue signalers? Like, that's hard to do. These poor refugees, we gotta help them. Oh, yeah. And the thing that really sold it was the dead child that washed ashore on the beach. This picture. And, oh, Christ, look at all these other fucking virtue signaling idiots. Jesus. But, the whole thing was a con job. Most of the people coming in are not even Syrian, and they're certainly not refugees. It's just a fucking lie. They're coming in from North Africa and all over the Middle East. It was just a fucking con. But you see how they use the humanitarian aid angle as a cover? Oh gosh, we gotta help these people out, Oh, and look at that. Look who just pledged to donate $500 million to the refugee effort. George Soros. Because he cares, don't you know? Yeah, he really cared about the British people too, didn't he?
You were the guy they said who broke the Bank of England.
Right, and
did.
Well, that's true.
Okay, getting back to the list here. What it means by shadow government is he'll fund a whole bunch of different nonprofit groups, charities, political activist groups, and stuff like that who manipulate a million different things in a million different ways. Like I said, it's all very complicated, and I'll have to do several more videos to get into more detail about this part of it and all the groups he funds. For right now, though, there's something I really want to get to because the election is drawing closer, and I really got to get this stuff out there. Yeah, I promise it'll be worth the wait if you just bear with me here. But just a quick overview, Soros' main organization is the Open Society Foundation. Ooh, sounds so nice. Foundation. Well, the Open Society's stated goals is to achieve a world without borders. Open society, open borders. National borders are the obstacle, he says. It's real. It's happening. Don't be an idiot like these people. These are what we call useful idiots, and they are useful to this guy. But basically, the Open Society Foundation is a grant-making network, and it's not. It's got a massive pile of cash that it just gives out to thousands of groups. Political groups, education funding on universities, media, everything. Here's a diagram kind of showing what I'm talking about. It's just a massive web, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. But here's the thing. They hand out all this money to all these different groups, but there's strings attached. And that's That's what's happening. You know, they give out this money to push an agenda. It's all about pushing the progressive agenda. That's what Soros is. He's a progressive. And we all know what progressive is, don't we? It's all the social justice, politically correct bullshit. It is the regressiveness that is sweeping across the Western world. Don't be fooled. Everything about the progressive agenda is evil with a smiley face on it.
Yeah, I'm fucking better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.
This is where most of this progressive bullshit comes from. I mean, have you ever noticed how it does seem a bit odd that all these people, you know, these progressive idiots, and they're all idiots, incompetent fucking retards, yet they're so fucking well-funded. I mean, have you noticed that? It's just a bit off. It's because of people like Soros. You know, he's not the only one. There's plenty of rich assholes pushing this agenda, but they don't call him the puppet master for nothing, so you know what I mean. But anyway, there's so much more to get into with all this, but I'll have to save it for the next video. But, you know, I mean, like, this is what it means by shadow government. And next step is to control the airwaves, fund existing radio and TV outlets and take control over them, or start your own outlets. And this is a very interesting one as well. And it's very complex, but suffice it to say, I mean, he's already accomplished that one in America, hasn't he? I mean, pretty much. You know, is it fair to say the mainstream media is on board with the progressive agenda, even to the point of causing their own suicide? I mean, they don't even pretend to be objective anymore. It's all about the, you know, Hillary, fuck Trump, leftist propaganda, and now everyone hates him. You know, nobody watches that crap anymore that they put out because it's just nothing but lies and propaganda and demonizing anyone who doesn't want to swallow their heaping spoonfuls of bullshit. You know, and instead of giving their audience what it wants, they've chosen to ride off a cliff. Well, it's because the people at the top who control these huge media conglomerates are all in bed with Soros and Hillary and this evil agenda. You know, fuck their audience. It's more important that this corruption, this system of corruption be allowed to flourish. And here's an article talking about Soros's media empire. Again, this is another one I'll have to get into later. But when it says create new media outlets, you know, these would be groups like Media Matters, MoveOn.org, Think Progress. I mean, he personally funded those. But, you know, then you got stuff like BuzzFeed, the Young Turks, AJ+. He didn't personally fund those. He probably helps with the funding of those, too. I mean, I just, like, who fucking knows with this crazy web of funding? But, you know, either way, it doesn't matter, though, because it's all part of the same agenda. You know what I'm saying? It's all part of the progressive agenda.
Racial prejudice is not cool, but when a person of color discriminates or stereotypes a white person because of their race, in the United States, they don't have the institutional power to back them up and say that those feelings are okay.
Fuck you.
Okay, now for the really scary stuff. The next few steps here, destabilize the state, sow unrest, stage massive demonstrations, civil disobedience, sit-ins, encourage activism, incitement, and violence, then take power. Is it sounding familiar? All right, before I get into all that, though, let me show you a clip from the Glenn Beck show. And, you know, I know it's Glenn Beck. You know, the guy has lost his fucking mind lately, and he's a never-Trumper, so fuck him. But you got to give credit where credit is due. You know, if someone's speaking the truth, then it's the truth. It doesn't matter who the messenger is. And this guy basically pulled back the curtain on all of this shit back in November 2010. He aired 3 episodes, you know, on his show at Fox, going over in detail all of it, and it's just explains it perfectly, you know, and it's all true. And if you want to figure all this out, you can, you know, go give it a watch. I'll leave a link. Even though it's, I don't know, it's weird, you know, Glenn Beck seems to be on the side of the globalists these days. He's a never-Trumper, but, you know, whatever. This was in 2010. And take note of that date, because it's pretty important.
You handle the top down. But it's also bottom up and inside out. Top down, bottom up, and inside out. So now your challenge as you leave here, our challenge, is to take care of that bottom up part and that inside out part, the heart part.
The heart part. That's what did it for me. He said the heart part. I'm like, there's something wrong here. But I didn't know what this meant. This is a tried and true technique that communists use to crush people of a nation between the members of a government at the top. Remember, he said, you've taken care of the top part. What does that mean? You put the right radicals in power. You've taken care of the top part. Then they get the radicals at the bottom to cause chaos. If you don't believe me, that's fine. I tell you, don't take my word for anything. You go ahead and look it up yourself. Let me take you back to where I took you at the beginning of this program, Czechoslovakia. I only told you half the story of what the Czechoslovakians thought was happening to their country in the late 1940s. After World War II, Czechoslovakia was in real trouble and people were hungry and there was strife. And a small group of communists managed to gain power in the Czech government through parliamentary maneuvers. That was taking care of the top-down pressure. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to all the people in Czechoslovakia, they were agitating people, getting them out into the streets, riot, strike, protest, create the illusion of a widespread clamor for change. That was the bottom-up pressure on the system. Well, the people were left in between, and they didn't know the truth. They didn't know what was going on. They were hungry, they were scared, they were confused, and they were looking for help. When they cried out for help from the government, which they thought was not with the rioters, oh, they got help. They had no idea that some at the top were in league with those creating the chaos at the bottom. The people at the top had formed a shadow government, and they were only too happy to help, and they helped by clamping down on the Czech people. So the Czech people were hit from both directions, top down, bottom up, and inside out. Their country was turned inside out. They didn't know what to believe. The same is now being called for.
Is it all starting to sound a little familiar? Remember, this was in 2010, and he was saying this. He was saying that this kind of shit was going to happen. Be on the lookout, America. So let me play that again and see if it makes a little more sense this time.
You put the right radicals in power. You've taken care of the top part. Then they get the radicals at the bottom to cause chaos.
Yeah, that motherfucker got Burn that shit down, bro. Burn that motherfucker.
Then they get the radicals at the bottom to cause chaos.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Black Power! Black Power! Black Power! You hear me on being? Is they white? Let me see. If they're white, white! They white, get their ass!
To cause chaos. To cause chaos. To cause chaos. To cause chaos.
Oh my God! Oh!
Boy, that's a lot of chaos. So have you noticed how these BLM riots seem to be getting increasingly more violent? I have. That's not an accident. This is the agenda. They want to cause so much chaos until we're crying out for help from the federal government, at which point they get to install a federalized police force. It's how we lose freedom in America. Don't think it'll happen? Well, what if I told you back in 2010 that Europe would be invaded by millions of Muslims by 2016? Would you have believed me? Of course not. What the fuck are you talking about? That's insane. Yeah, well, it fucking happened, didn't it? And let me point something else out. Have you ever wondered why these Black Lives Matter assholes only choose cases that are clearly justified shootings? I mean, they only defend the thugs. Well, it's because if they weren't justified shootings, then it wouldn't cause the kind of division that they want. All the normal people would be like, yeah, hey, I agree, that cop fucked up, they should be punished. But instead, they defend thugs who were shot for good reason. That way, when the cop is inevitably not prosecuted, they get to say, oh my God, it's so terrible, they're gunning us down in the streets and don't even face justice. Plus, it causes that, black-white divide. Not to mention this whole Black Lives Matter thing emboldens criminals. Homicides are skyrocketing all over the country in the black community, and it's hindering police from simply being able to do their job. And if police can't do their job, then the chaos spreads and society collapses in on itself. So this is the fucking chaos. It's all these things working together. So we're getting a lot of chaos, aren't we? And by the way, they are in fact causing these fucking riots.
They were agitating people, getting them out into the streets, riot, strike, protest, create the illusion of a widespread clamor for change.
And not only does the media push these fucking lies every single time, this bullshit narrative that it's, just a poor innocent black man shot for being black, didn't do anything wrong, but they're also shipping in agitators. They were busing them into Ferguson, and look at this. Spokesman for the police in Charlotte said 70% of the rioters arrested had out-of-state IDs. Well, isn't that interesting? It certainly wouldn't be hard to pay a bunch of jackasses to go in and stir shit up, now would it? Because once you get shit started, then it's just mob rule.
Well, the people were left in between, and they didn't know the truth. They didn't know what was going on. They were hungry, they were scared, they were confused, and they were looking for help. When they cried out for help from the government, which they thought was not with the rioters, they got help. They had no idea that some in the top were in league with those creating the chaos at the bottom.
So you think maybe the current administration is in league with the rioters? I don't know. Hard to say for sure. Having 3-hour meetings at the White House with DeRay McKesson and Al Sharpton. Wonder what those meetings were about. I'm sure it was to the benefit of the American people, obviously. Oh, hey, wait a minute. I just remembered something. Wasn't Black Lives Matter funded by George Soros to the tune of $33 million? No, that can't be right. That's just crazy, far right-wing conspiracy theory crap. After all, this DeRay McKesson fellow is a fine, upstanding gentleman who's living in a house that's owned by an Open Society board member. Oh, wait a minute, Open Society. Shit, isn't that thing that George Soros owns? That's weird. And this DeRay McKesson fella, he really gets around. Fortune magazine put him on their top 50 list of the world's greatest leaders. Wait a minute. Does that really say world's greatest leaders? DeRay McKesson, a 2-bit race hustler who starts riots, is one of the world's greatest leaders? Nah, this can't be right. This has to be like a parody list or something. Let's see who else is on here. Bill Gates. Yeah, I think I've heard of that guy. CEO of Starbucks. Yeah, they're doing pretty well. Jeremy Farrar, apparently he's a guy who researches deadly viruses. Elon Musk, oh god, yeah, that guy. He revolutionized the electric car industry. He's fucking around with space travel. Yeah, I can see why they would put DeRay McKesson on the list. And, whoever that dyke is, makes sense. Oh, and look at that. There's DeRay with Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter. Boy, it sure fucking pays to be pals with George Soros, doesn't it?
We have been given an extraordinary blessing, and at this moment in time, our country needs us. And we need people like George Soros, who is fearless and willing to step up when it counts.
So anyway, there it is. That's what this election is about. We're either going to vote to take our country back, or we're going to vote for a communist takeover. This election is between two billionaires. Don't kid yourself. One of them operates from the shadows, and he already won the last 2 elections, and now he's going for a third. But the other one, he's out in the open. He's not hiding. He's standing on his own 2 feet in the light of day, standing up for the American people and rejecting this cesspool of corruption. He doesn't need a billionaire behind him, funding him, telling him what to do, because he is the fucking billionaire. And we know who he is. We know how he made his money. He didn't steal it like George Soros did. Trump is the embodiment of the American dream, and he's not putting up with these people's bullshit anymore. So please don't bury your head in the sand, because this stuff is real. It is happening. And if Donald Trump does not win this election, we are fucked.